Hey, I think we're ready to get started. Again, welcome everyone to our fourth in our series of 6 webinars from the School of Business and Technology here at St. Mary's University. I'm Mary Jacobs. I'm the Associate Dean and the Program Director, MBA Program Director here at St. Mary's. And it is so exciting for us to speak with Alisa DiSalvo today on the topic of AI yourself. Alisa is a doctoral candidate with a focus in IT. She teaches in our undergraduate program and oversees the undergraduate accounting program, as well as the program director for a master's in accounting. And Alisa, we are really excited to hear from you for the next 20 to 30 minutes. I know you've got some great information available, and we will make sure that we leave time at the end of our presentation for people to ask questions. And if people would like to ask questions along the way of something that you've said and they want to ask for confirmation or have a question, please feel free to either put it in the chat, which we'll keep an eye on, or come online and ask your question directly. Alisa, I'm going to turn it over to you. So here, first question. You and I prepared some questions as you've been pulling together information for our webinar today. So tell us more about your background and your experience with AI, teaching both at the college and at the graduate levels.
Well, as you know, Mary, I mean, in education, things are constantly changing and evolving. And I think at this point, AI has to be a part of the process. It is something that I know professionally I have seen for years. And now it's to the forefront. And I think before I go forward, I'll go back just a little bit. So my background prior to teaching, I was in manufacturing, distribution, supply chain. In those areas, I did everything from working with new technology all the way through, operations, accounting, of course, my bread and butter area. And every single place I've ever worked, it's how can we automate things to make it quicker, to be more efficient, to, get things done timely. And it used to be fun saying, oh, that'll take me a half an hour and be able to push a button. It's right there. And that was with the original technology of being able to write just a quick code line and run reports. Well, we're now in a world where everybody has access to everything. So I think when it comes to bringing that into college, undergraduate and graduate world, there's a lot of things to consider. And today we're going to talk about that a little bit. And we're going to talk about how not only can we integrate it into the classroom, but make people comfortable using it. And I think that's such a key aspect of everything.
Let me ask you from your perspective, because you're working with both undergraduate students as well as graduate students. Do you see a difference of how they embrace the use of AI right into their education, into their everyday lives? Like, what's your perspective, both as a professional who navigates really well in this world of AI, as well as the faculty who's teaching undergraduate and graduate students around using and embedding an AI in the work that they do?
You know, it's interesting. So the more comfortable you are with anything, the more you're going to integrate it, period. However, there seems to be, things that are holding people back from wanting to really jump in. Okay. And you bring up an interesting point. So I think the undergraduate students, they're learning just like everyone else, but they're used to seeing simulations. They're used to seeing technology at a certain level. But now we're taking that level and transforming it to how can you use it professionally? How can you use it ethically? And on the graduate side of it, you may have a whole host of people that have built their career and are going back for a second career, or are currently in the industry. And, I'm going to rely on accounting on this side. If you look at the larger firms, they're already using many open AI sources, well, to them, for to be transparent, but they're utilizing it now, so they have to know how to use it. And it's starting to be asked if you look at job applications and then interviews. So it's preparing everyone across every level from base to advanced.
So let me add a story just from an experience I had a couple weeks ago. I went to a dinner here in the Minneapolis area called for Best Prep, which is their annual dinner several hundred people were there, and they had an expert from MIT, who's a professor at MIT, but he's been an expert in AI. He's worked in Washington, 2 administrations, and he's an expert in technology. He did a 45-minute presentation. And at the end of the presentation, they put together a panel. And on the panel were 2 high school students, and they talked about AI and integrating AI into the classroom, the experience. And this young senior who was talking about the use of it in the work that he's doing now in high school, who plans for a career in technology, phenomenal response from the audience, as well as the professor from MIT, how his vocabulary was so robust as a young person, still in high school, right? But he was talking about terminology and vocabulary that I would say a fair amount of the audience kind of knows a little bit about, but the fact that he really understood it and could articulate it in this format was really, really impressive. So I've been seeing more and more of that opportunity, right, for people to talk about AI and how it impacts the work that they do. Can you talk about the fear of the word AI? Because you're talking to lots of people. You're talking to your students, you're talking to industry partners, friends, colleagues, and the like. AI is on everybody's mind. Give a perspective about what people fear about AI.
Well, I happen to have a really close friend of mine that is terrified of AI. And I don't want to say terrified in the way of, I don't want to touch my computer. It is more of the fear of loss of originality.
Mhm.
And then you have people that are just, they're worried about, if I put something out there, is it going to come back to get me? And there's a lot of various factors that are at play. And really, it's almost nothing to be fearful of. It's something that will help you grow, develop, and actually have a little fun along the way. There was an article, actually, I just read, a colleague shared with me, and it was talking about how GPT, pardon me, is a generative AI product. And it talks about, pre-trained large language model, text prompts, and utilizing, those keyword searches. And it was an excellent article, just putting it in language that basically that high school student in that example probably utilized in talking about technology, but also turning it into something that made sense for other people. And so when you look at it, it's kind of like you have to predefine what it is. In this case today, I'm going to talk a lot about generative AI. I am not talking about robotics. Now, robotics is a whole nother level of AI, and there's a whole host of ethical concerns when it comes to that as well. But for you and me and most business professionals, we're looking at machine learning. We're looking at how do we make things more operationally effective. So if you think about this, I'm going to put on my age hat here. Professionally, I was in the, when Excel came out, when every time Excel updated, I was ecstatic about the creation of additional rows so I could put more data in the sheet before it was maxed out. If you just look at that today, you could put a whole host of data now in Excel and it still functions beautifully. Businesses are looking for Excel skills, and that's a skill that we've been looking for 20 years. But what's different in today is the word AI. People think it's a little bit scary. It's an unknown. But if I look at Excel, that's taking it a step further. That's learning more advanced Excel. That's understanding pivot tables, how to create that dashboard to tell the story of what's happening with the data in the business. So it really is just taking that next step of learning more software and understanding it's nothing to be fearful of.
So let me add on to that. One of the things that I read on TV, read about in articles and newspapers and like, is people fear that AI is going to replace them in their jobs. I think that's probably one of the biggest unknowns and the biggest fears that people have, that the work that they perform today, that they're potentially replaceable. Do you have a perspective about how do you allay that fear, right? That you don't have to worry about your job is going to be taken over by AI or robotics for that matter, because we're starting to see, I think, in restaurants or baseball fields, right, that there's these umpires that are, I mean, it's just an interesting development in our world today, which is understandably confusing and for some people fearful, right, about the impact of it. But you have a perspective too, because I'm sure you engage in many, many conversations with business professionals and your students.
It comes up all the time. And in fact, it came up in a classroom yesterday. And AI is something to embrace. It's not something to fear. So when I say that, if I am walking in as a manager at any company, I'm still doing my daily role. I'm still doing all the aspects of my job. However, there will be parts of it that are automated to make my time more efficient. I don't need to waste my time doing a lot of these various aspects and spending hours doing these aspects when it can be done at a push of a button. Now, what that does is it frees up my time to do more and to do different things. So, for example, in accounting, if I'm not, as concerned with getting those transactions into the system, I'm going to be more looking at, okay, after the accounting cycle, how can I utilize all this data to be the strategic partner I need to be to help the business move forward? So replacing, I have to say no. It's allowing us to focus on the things that make us competitive. And that really does need the human touch. Again, AI does a lot, but without human intervention and human thought process and creative thinking to move forward, it's just data and that's it.
Good perspective. I mean, you and I talked the other day about Excel, right? I thought that Excel example just it simplified it. It made a lot of sense though, too, right? So as Excel is expanding in its functionality to the betterment, right, of the people that work within Excel, how does that positively impact their job rather than being afraid that, oh, Excel will take away a part of my job? It enhances, and I think to your point about freeing up kind of more bandwidth to do more work, do more analysis, make better recommendations, and build better strategy. So let me ask you this question. How would you guide a student versus a current professional?
Well, I am not a big slide person, even though in classes I tend to use them here and there as guides. What I want to do is I want to show you.
Okay.
So if I'm working with a student, I'm going to share my screen so you guys can all take a look at this. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is just ChatGPT. And this is my account, so my version of it. If you're somebody that has never used AI, and believe it or not, you probably already have and you just don't know it. Anytime you type a question in, if you're on a customer page or do a search on many web pages, an AI form is a form of AI is happening behind the scenes. If I use ChatGPT, it is a great place to start. So for students, I encourage this. If they're taking, for example, a tax class, and I ask a question on, you know what, based on this situation or this scenario, where would I go to? What tax law am I looking for? Well, we all know that tax professionals are continually studying every year all the changes and hundreds of various aspects and points that are happening in tax law. Well, they can go in and type the question, retrieve and answer back. Now, here's the kicker. Any of these search engines are only as good of what data is behind it. So it might not be right because the tax law might have just changed. So, but what it does do is it allows me to have a starting point. So it's going to allow the student to go, okay, now I'm going to go to the IRS. I'm going to look up the, an IRC code or whatever. And it saved me multiple steps in the journey of figuring out where to start. Now, as a professional, there's multiple different ways you can use things, but you always have to keep in mind security. You never want to release personal information. You never want to release company information. So that's why many companies have their own that is selected completely to their databases only. So they won't even let you bring up ChatGPT within the company itself. They'll have their own version. But if they don't, then you could say, give me an example of a memo format. And of course, I misspelled it because I was in a hurry.
Still worked.
It still worked. So it gave me an idea of what a memo should look like. And then I could go from there. Now, this is great. I use this all the time, but I honestly prefer Claude. Claude is another one that's similar to Chat. It is a ChatGPT type, but it gives you a little bit different of a feedback. And, you can see recent chats I've had. Rubric design for assessing research. And it'll give me, this was from a cleaner idea for rubrics. Now, as an instructor, I can be a whole lot more specific and say, you know what? Remove source selection, replace with APA. Change the wording to, and then it'll change and update. So there's a lot of different things that can be done. In my experience, the more you play with anything, the better off you're going to get at it. So in either one of these, there's a lot to play with. Now, there's free versions of both. The free version of Claude, in my opinion, is a little bit more robust.
Okay.
But you also have ChatGPT that if you look at it, you can also do image searches. You could do all sorts of different things depending on the version you have. Now, those two would be two of the most used, I would say, in the classroom when it comes to the chat feature and reasoning for use. It should never be utilized as a final product, period. If I'm in a company and I'm writing a letter, form letter, and I'm using, let's say I'm at a large firm and they have all their form letters and everything in their database. And you go in and you pull one up. That's great. You now have the format, you have the language, but what it doesn't have is that customer or client specific feel to it. So it is essential to alter and change to be specific to its needs. So whatever you create in any one of these, it be it Claude or wherever, you always want to alter it to make sure that it's your own and make sure it's personable. And this is where the human touch really comes into play, because a generic comment doesn't necessarily match to everyone. It might only match to maybe 5%. So you have to make sure it's personalized. Otherwise, their customer's going to read it as, oh, great, another AI written letter. They didn't really listen to what I was saying. So play in those. Start putting in things. I was joking around before this session started and said how to cook the proper filet. I love steak. And of course, it ends with a recommendation of wine at the end to go with it. So, and after it came up, I said, okay, instead of in the oven, I want to hear it on the grill. I want to know how to cook it on a grill. And it came up with those instructions as well. So it's almost like having a little assistant next to you all the time.
So let me ask you kind of a simple question, right? It sounds like Google too. You could put in that same information into Google. So Google, of course, is a form of AI. From your perspective, what are some of the key kind of fundamental tools that ChatGPT is popular, Claude, some people know of, not everybody does, but from your perspective, what are some of the AI tools that are out there and resources right now that people should know about? Some do and some don't.
Well, there's a bunch. Anybody that has done a search on AI, you're going to find there's AI for everything. There's an application for everything.
Okay.
Some are good, some aren't. Some cost money, some don't. I tend to gravitate towards the free ones so I can try it. And if I like it, then I'll get advanced options by paying for it. Claude is a common used one. Google has Google Assistants now. You have it in Microsoft products as well. All of those are common in everyday use. What I like about these is if I switch this to write a memo on tax code, I could start changing it up to make it sound the way I want it. And I could keep sculpting and massaging this through text keywords, making this into what I want, where it's much more difficult to keep doing that in a Word document. It's quicker in this type of environment. I want to go back to the Excel, because one thing that I think people in the professional industry and also students, I point students towards, go to YouTube. I know it sounds silly, but YouTube is a wonderful thing. If you are trying to figure out how to do pivot tables or improve your Excel, you can figure out how to create dashboards in 15 minutes. You can for hidden Excel dashboards designs. When you'll hear me talk about a little bit later, what are people in search of and what are they looking for in the industry? And it's for you to be adaptive. And part of that is stretching yourself to continue to learn. So if I'm looking at specific AI, well, let's look at this. This is one called Napkin.ai. And I like this because in this, I just put in a topic, moving past basic Excel into Tableau. And Tableau is an amazing software past Excel, which creates a beautiful dashboard effect. And it costs a little money, but it's an excellent tool that a lot of companies are using today. So I asked, moving past basic Excel into Tableau, what do I need to do? And it popped up this. There are limitations. Why choose Tableau? How to get started? In the Accounting Masters of Accounting program, we utilize Tableau in our data analytics for accountants class. And it's just learning R, it's learning Tableau, it's learning everything past Excel and with Excel. So irrelevant if you're working at a small to medium-sized company or a large company, we're trying to cross the barriers to give you plenty of experience so you'll understand what you're doing if you're asked to do it. Now, this is Napkin AI, and look, it comes out on lined paper. And there's other things you can do within this. But let me take you, because I know time's limited, to my 3 favorites. Research Rabbit, if you are someone who loves to research. I can add an article by clicking Add Paper. And in this case, I added, of course, integrating technology and data analytics into accounting curriculum. It's a great article, by the way. What it does, check this out. It explores similar work, references, and citations. More papers by the authors themselves that publish this. So it is an excellent place to kind of hold, I put it under my collection of data analytics. I could put all sorts of papers in here to organize and keep all my research together, and then to help me to continue to research forward. And again, I can connect it to Zotero, which is putting it in a bibliography or a reference page. So there's a lot of things that can happen. And at St. Mary's, this is one that our Writing Center is looking at right now. So these are common research tools that you could use right now, today. And this is free. You know what? I'm going to jump to this one.
Okay.
So I was laughing when creating slide decks are never fun, but it seems like you always have to create a slide deck for presentations in higher ed, for the business world, for everything, even if you're a student in class. Now, if you do this as a student, I'll tease you a little bit, but this is Gamma app. And Gamma, I went in and just said, hey, this is my topic header. Create a presentation. And it took forever. I think it took 3 seconds. And what it did, was it created this entire slide deck with pictures and added information in 3 seconds. I can now take this as a base, and then here, let me move this box a little bit. On the right-hand side, I can make all sorts of changes to it. I can change the wording, I could change the pictures, I could change the look, but it gave me in 3 seconds a layout I can use. So you can't tell me that doesn't save you just an absolute ton of time. Yes, you can edit it. Yes, you can play with it and change things around, but just having that base starting point sometimes is what you need to trigger what you want to show and how you want to show it. The last one I wanted to show you is, I'm going to use the Kabara Institute here at Winona as an example. This is called Notebook LM. It's a Google product. You can add sources, and in this case, I added the Kabara Institute links. And what it does is it takes all of this information that I saved in, creates a summary of all of these sources in a 1-paragraph succinct hit. But what's cool about it is then I have the chat feature where I could ask expand on services. And what it'll do is it adds to it. So that's all coming from just these sources. Now, this is amazing. So if I'm looking at this, I could then go to the studio side, hit a button. I've already generated it because it usually takes just a minute or two. It generates a live podcast for this information that was created with humanistic qualities. So it's 2 people having a genuine conversation about the topic that you just created right here. Within this, you could create study guide notes, you could do a briefing doc, create timeline. I was creating frequently asked questions. So there's a lot of things in this one AI packet that's, by the way, free, that you can get a lot of information done quickly. And now that I know time is of the essence, the last thing I want to talk about is remove the fear, start learning. You know, if you look at all of you, professionals and students alone, most of you have a LinkedIn page. This is mine. I subscribe to the Atlas, and in the Atlas, I literally get daily AI updates. This one just came out. Personalize your AI feed, get only what matters, irrelevant of your industry. It gives you suggestions on climate, on finance, on HR, edge of AI, what's the newest stuff happening? Design, all you marketing people, my God, this is just a treasure trove. So irrelevant of your degree program, undergraduate or graduate, start subscribing to these free quick hits. It takes me no time at all to read through these when they pop through on my LinkedIn account. What's interesting as well is you get all these killer feedback from people in the industry that say, hey, I've got more information I can post to this. So I follow generative AI. It's a huge topic, but I also follow industry specific. All right, I'll stop talking now, Mary.
And clearly by your doctorate too, and what you're studying, right? Technology, it's very important. And we're lucky enough to have you at St. Mary's, along with a few other colleagues that really are experts on AI and have strong opinions and are leaders and thought leaders within our own community here at St. Mary's. We've got some questions that I wanted to, starting off with John. I expect my job as a data analyst to be replaced in 2 years by AI. That is why I'm here, so I can ride the wave rather than drown by it. John, thank you for being honest in your comment here. And Alisa, so here's someone who is expecting as a business analyst that AI could potentially impact his position in the next couple of years. Any response to that or perspective about allaying John's fears about his job? He's probably not the only one who thinks that either, by the way.
Absolutely. And, honestly, you need to look past it. And what I mean by that is take a look at the jobs that you want to move towards.
Mhm.
If you want to be an analyst right now, that's phenomenal. It's a great place, but look at what's next for you as well and start building your skills up. One of the things I just sat down with a gentleman that is an analyst, and he loves what he does, and what he does is phenomenal. And I'm like, well, what step are you taking to help that become strategy? How are you taking that step to get into management to be a part of those talks instead of just creating the base? And so it really boils down to moving forward and seeing where kind of seeing it, I hate to say this, it's the old magic 8 ball. What's coming in the future?
Mhm.
You have to start thinking a year or two ahead, not 5 years anymore. It's a year or two ahead. What skills can keep me going? Where is my career going, and how can I AI proof it? If that makes sense.
Yeah, great feedback. And John, thank you for posting your comment here. I've got another one from our colleague, Paul Kotz. Thank you for your comments on the human touch and that we can embrace it, AI, instead of being afraid of it. Plus, it allows us to have a starting point in our research endeavors. Do you have a sense of how much generative AI our students of today and tomorrow can use and still have their work be original and or authentic? Great question.
John, let's see. Paul, it comes back to this. AI is a great starting place to kind of kick you off. It is an amazing kickoff point. It should never be the final deliverable. I saw a question pop up of, I'm terrified about plagiarism. That's huge. And it is such a common feel right now. And I get that a lot. That's why, you know what? It's a starting point. Then you're going to add your own personal analysis. You're going to add your own personal touch to it. You are going to change. And if there's a sentence that you really, really like that a chat wrote for you, cite it. It's just like everything else in academics. If it's not your idea, don't take credit for it. So cite it. And there are citations in APA 7th edition for citing these type of materials. That would be my best advice. But you've got to add yourself to it because you are unique. You are what brings it to life.
And you are spot on about the citing. I think that's one of the challenges right now for students that are writing papers, right? And fearful about plagiarism is it's important to cite the resource of where you got your information. Lori has a question. Back to Research Rabbit. Are we assured that the articles in Research Rabbit are real and not hallucinations? AI, excuse me, hallucinations.
Actually, Rabbit has been growing, and it's one of the ones that I like a lot more than the rest. It is I'm going to put this. What you're putting into it, is fact because it's an article that you want to explore or a topic that you want to explore. And like any other AI, you've got to double check it. I mean, I think that's a fact of life moving forward. It's been a long time since I found a lot of garbage and within Rabbit AI. I think you're going to be fine. Anybody doing research, the ability to cut down your time on the amount of articles and finding the articles you need, you know what? You just saved a ton of time. Now you can use that time verifying them because you should be reading them anyways.
Good question, though, Lori. Thanks for posing that. Tristika, super awesome tool. Can you share your favorite AI sites or a list you feel confident for students and professionals to use? I think you've kind of given us what I've got: Claude, Napkin, Tableau, Research Rabbit, Gamma, Notebook LM.
Those are ones that I play with all the time. There's a ton others. It's just unbelievable amount of, and I'm glad that was asked because if you go into your industry, let's say I'm in HR. If I'm in HR, I'm going to go to, the HRM. I'm going to go to who my authoritative people are, or the website. And I'm going to say what kind of tools are being utilized today. We know to scrub through any applicants, AI is picking up keyword searches and determining what applicants get an interview and, weaning that down. But every industry on their, their authoritative, like for me, it's AICPA, it's the IMA, American Accounting Association has a bunch of stuff. What is being utilized in my industry? And that's where I'd start. I would take a look. I mean, marketing has an amazing amount of AI being utilized as well. And they usually provide a list of where to start.
Othello, I've got a couple of messages in here. Quite an informative, webinar with Alisa. Where can we find the recording? We will send out the link to people that registered for the recording today, so you'll have access to that. I think, Othello, we should have answered your question about plagiarism. And if we haven't, just let us know and add another comment here. Sahida, I think you posed the question about people being fearful. What do you think about this is another part of the question. What do you think about young kids learning about AI?
As long as it's always kept as a tool to help you instead of as the end all be all. Mary, I would love to, there's a lot of generations in there, and I know I'm getting older. And part of being older is I didn't grow up with technology like kids now are. And I think, especially if you look at college kids now, even ones that are kids being born now are more exposed than even they are. So technology is here to help us. It's not here to do it for us. And it's really imperative. You keep your critical thinking skills sharp, creativity, and you add yourself to whatever you're doing. That's what separates you from auto generation.
I can tell your passion. John Ebert. All right. What do you think will be the biggest challenge in evolving AI stewardship within organizations? That's a good question, John Ebert.
Ooh, repeat that one more time. I want to make sure I answer this clearly.
What do you think will be the biggest challenge in evolving AI stewardship within organizations?
Within an organization, you're always going to have people from here to here. So opinions are probably going to be one of the hardest things to kind of wrestle and come to some type of consensus. If there's a path, if there's a clear direction and knowledge presentation to administrative all the way down from the top down, I think people will follow it. I think many people are just looking for the direction of how. And if how is understood in the why, then I think it won't be an issue. I think it'll disseminate without issue.
Good perspective. Valerie has posted, if someone is interested in following someone, Nippon Meta at Service Space. So that information is in the chat if you want to take a look at Valerie's. And then I think we've got one last question here from Garrett. What are your thoughts on the repercussions about how much energy it takes to run ChatGPT, for example?
I don't even know how to answer that one.
Okay.
To be thoroughly honest, and yeah, that is a good one, because if you look at it, you can look at that from a couple different perspectives. And one would be, some of the new technology coming out now that's actually utilizing the data that the ChatGPT was built on. So you could look at it from an environmental standpoint. The databases have to be there in order for this to all work. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer that. That's a great question. I'll have to think about it.
Garrett, you have stumped
I know.
our expert. Good question. Thank you. Well,
you can always email me too.
Well, with that, Alisa, thank you for sharing your expertise. Clearly, you have a lot of passion around AI, And I can imagine the impact in the classroom with both your college students and your graduate students and embracing. I know we've had many conversations, right, about AI is here to stay. How do we embrace it? How do we use it professionally and ethically? We could have a whole session, right, on ethics of using AI. So really appreciate your time and your expertise. I'm going to have you quickly, if you'd like to just put a plug in. You're the program director for the accounting program here, the Masters of Accounting. If you want to leave your contact information, if people are interested in reaching out to you, maybe you could even put that in the chat as well. And then just a couple of reminders. We have 2 more upcoming webinars. Next month on March 26th, Dr. Paul Kotz will speak on the science of well-being. He is an exceptional speaker, and I know he writes about this topic often, and look forward to that webinar presentation. And then I'm doing the last one on April 30th about exploring entrepreneurship. So do look for more of these to come in the next several months. We're in the planning phase right now. We started this series back in October with great success. And we know that there's an appetite and an interest in learning more about expertise that we have at St. Mary's University, and we want to be able to share that information. Thank you to all who were very active in the chat. Thank you for staying with us for the webinar today, and appreciate your attendance today, and have a good rest of the day. You've got Alisa's, I don't
Email.
think, okay, thank you. There it is. Now I see it. And thank you everyone for being here today. We greatly appreciate it. Have a good
Thank you.
rest of your day too.